Hi, welcome to Unit 1925. This is about preparing the program, and today we're going for a fly in the gyrocopter. The first part of this is about program design, and there are 10 steps in program design. The first step is working out the need for a program. Is there actually a need for this program? Second is to work out the governance. Who's going to provide oversight for this program? Third is about the objectives and the outcomes for the program, and then all the little different components of the program. And then the support we require. So you might require support like communication, or you might require support like computer support. And then you're going to need to work out the resources that you require for the program, and then the overall cost. How much will this program cost? And then after that, the last part of this is working out the documentation, the review of the program and the documentation that you need for the program. Okay, so let's unpack those 10 steps a little bit. First, we're looking at the need. Is there a need for this program? So we're looking at the gaps. Is there a gap here? Will it meet the needs of the students? Second, we're looking at the program objectives. What is this program intended to achieve for this group of students? Thirdly, we want to look at the program principles. And so this is the rules and values that guide the program. So it could be things like being inclusive. It might be something like being youth focused, and also it's going to need to be compliant with the organisation's policies and procedures and, relevant legislation. The fourth is looking at program components. So this is a specific set of connected activities that make up the program. And then we want to look at the program support. And program support, all the support processes that we need for the program. So that might be things like computers, computer software, might be communication devices, etc. And even apps, applications that will help us or support us in putting this program together. And then we're looking at the resources that we require for the program. The resources will be physical resources, technical resources, human resources. Some of these resources you might already have in your community or your school community. Other resources you may need to get hold of. And then after that, we're going to have to look at the budget. How much is this program going to cost? And do we have a budget for it? Where is that money going to come from? And that might, of course, lead to fundraising. Do you need to have a fundraising program for this program? Lastly, we're going to look at the review of the program, an evaluation of the program, and then how we document that, the documentation of the program. Over all of this, you will have governance, you will have people who provide the oversight for the program. Well, we survived the gyrocopter and we're back in the office. So that's the 10 steps of program design. And now we're going to look at types or models of design. And the first of these is the logic model. So this is like a cause and effect model. So if this happens, then this will happen, and it flows all across the program. So if that happens, then this will happen, and so on and so forth. It also includes other things like evidence and processes, etc. Here we've got an example of a logic model, and this is in a healthcare context, and it's a clean hands program. So it's a program to encourage people to wash or clean their hands. This is the Clean Hands program, and so this is a program to help people in a health context to keep hands clean and therefore to reduce infection. And so you can see that it starts off over here, and then if this happens, then that happens. So it's a cause and effect model all the way through. So that's what we call a logic model. And then we have the theory of change model. And this is interesting because what it does is it starts with the long-term goal or the outcome, and then it works backwards through all the different steps. And so here's another clean hands model, and you can see with this one that it starts up here with the clean hands outcome. So it's saying that we'll have reduced infection for patients because of clean hands, and then it works backwards all the way through the program to the hospital devoting the resources to that program. Another model is the social action model, and this is based on reallocating political power. So, for example, marginalised young people can access opportunities, that they can have a voice, that they can access resources. This is an empowerment model, and it utilises things like collaboration, partnership, alliances, etc. Another model is the evidence-based program model. And so this could be a program that's already been implemented or tried. It's been formally evaluated by researchers or academics. So there's evidence to show that this program is going to be effective, or this model of a program will be effective. But you can also have an evidence-based program which is just based on data or evidence to show that a program will be successful. So that's what we call data or evidence-based programs. Let's have a look at question 17, or the first part of question 17, which is about the models of program design. So part B asks you, using the theory of change, remember that, where you start with the outcome first and work backwards, show how you could develop a program in your residence using this model. So identify a student issue in your residence, and then define the goal that you would like to achieve. Remember, we start with that goal and then we work backwards. And then describe 3 understandings that you would like the students to achieve from that goal. So an example of that could be the use of phones in the recreation area. So your goal or your outcome might be no personal phone use in the common recreation area. You don't want any personal phone use in that common recreation area. And the understandings that the students could come up with is something like face-to-face social contact's essential for social development. If they want to care for or be concerned for others, this means interacting with others. And overuse of phones or screens is linked to anxiety, etc. So we've looked at those 4 different types of models that you can use to design a program. And now we want to look at resources, because you're going to need to have resources to run your program. And resources are generally human resources, facilities, equipment, and consumable resources. So with human resources, you might have people who've got specific skills, or they might just be people with general skills, or you might be using your own staff. For facilities, we might be talking about buildings, rooms, ovals, swimming pools, that sort of thing. Equipment might be buses, vehicles, sports equipment, tools, even things like barbecues and trailers. Consumable resources are things like fuel, petrol, oil, pencils, food, soft drinks, etc. Question 18 asks, and there's 2 parts to this question, if you were designing a program on awareness and respect for other cultures that went for 2 hours a week for a month, then list the resources that you would require under the following headings. And those 4 headings again: human resources, facilities, equipment, and consumable resources. If you're planning a program, you're going to need funding. You're going to need money to run programs, and where is that going to come from? You could use existing resources. So for example, for mental health information program, you might use a Headspace volunteer plus your own staff. Another place you could get funding is to request an allocation of funds from your own larger program. So if you were running something like an Artists in Residence program, you might request funds from your residents for a budget to pay the artist, pay for paints, pay for canvas, etc. Then you might request funds from parents. So imagine you're running a Year 9 trip to Canberra. You might get some money from parents. You'd have some money from fundraising activities, sausage sizzles, car washes, all that sort of thing. And also probably a bit from the residents' budget. So you get a bit from each of them. And then you can get funding applications from community grants type programs from your local shire, that sort of thing. Question 18, and the second part of this question asks, list 4 possible ways you could obtain funding for the program. If we are doing programs for young people, then we should be using youth-centred practices. This is where young people are central, where activity engages young people, where there are opportunities for young people to take responsibilities, and where you empower young people. These are youth-centred practices. There's 2 parts to this really. There's the knowing and the doing. So the knowing includes things like this. being informed about the interests and issues of young people, understanding the factors that influence young people, being sensitive to the special needs of young people, respecting the young person's identity, their culture and their diversity, and understanding developmental issues of young people. And then there's the doing part. What do we do? Part of this is including young people in decision making, empowering young people, use sensitive, innovative approaches, observe boundaries and codes of ethics, establish an environment that's comfortable and user-friendly for young people, adhere to confidentiality and duty of care requirements. So that's the doing part. Question 19 asks, if you were developing a program for resilience and well-being, list 5 essential youth-centred practices. When you're preparing or planning for a program, you should have contingency plans. You know, if something goes wrong, if resources or people are not available as you expected, or if some sort of unexpected event occurs, you know, like a weather event. Leaders can deal with these situations and just continue with the program. So how can they do that? Leaders can have additional activities for each time block. You could have additional resources, including additional people. You could have an alternative venue, alternative equipment, backup human resources, alternative activities if the program is affected by weather. Question 20 asks, if you were developing a program, what are 4 actions you could take that would allow for contingencies? When planning a boarding schools or boarding residences program, you generally have an annual delivery plan that includes all of these sort of things. So this is the whole annual delivery plan. You'd have your aims and objectives, you'd have your budget with resourcing details, staff with appropriate qualifications, activities, issues, evaluation and feedback processes, and contingency plans. Most boarding residences will have these annual delivery plans, but they're probably not going to call it the annual delivery plan, but these plans will be there and they will have all of those elements to them. The annual delivery plan is based on these things, and it's generally in 2 parts, an annual program and then activity schedules. The annual program has all the major events, and then it also covers the issues that you want to cover during that year. So it might cover things like behaviour in the residence, manners, fitness, respecting other boarders, depression and mental illness, study routines, sexuality and sexual health, care of the residents, body image, the media, helplines, all of those sort of things. And an annual plan looks like this. So an annual plan looks like this, and you can see that it covers the dates and all of the different activities or themes or issues that you want to cover for all the different terms. And you'll generally do these for a whole term or possibly for the year, and they may be changed during the year depending on the availability of people or resources, etc. An activity plan is usually for a term or even for a few weeks, or even a couple of weeks, and it'll have all of the activities for each weekend and then each weekday if you do have activities on weekdays. These are very common. You see them on notice board in residences, and these days they may also be online or on apps, that sort of thing. So this is the end of part 3, prepare the program.